quirkier side of life. The Todd Starnes Commentary.
An American high school read a Muslim poem on the 12th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks, but they did not recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The principal of Concord Carlisle High School in Boston says they were trying to offer a cross-cultural understanding. An understanding of what? I think it's pretty clear what happened on 9/11, sir. Muslim terrorists flew jetliners into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and flew a plane into a field in Pennsylvania. The principal did apologize for not reciting the pledge, says it was an error. As for the poem, it's called My Grandmother Washes Her Feet in the Sink of the Bathroom at Sears. Somehow the educators at Concord Carlisle High School thought that would be a better representation of what happened 12 years ago. Folks, I'm getting sick and tired of all this politically correct appeasement. I'm Todd Starnes.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk. Thank you, Todd Starnes. We all are. And that means, as Americans, we are. Left, right, center. I think we're getting tired of it. We all say we want the truth, nothing but truth. Well, political correctness is not the truth. It's spinning, and it's providing a layer of, fertilizer. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We go now to a few stories that hit us today. Like you, watching the events unfold in Washington, D.C., the Naval Yard, and the deaths, the murders of 13, evoked the memory of Fort Hood. And we do not know, by the way, if this is a terrorist attack. There has been a investigation into, actually it started with two other gunmen, possible gunmen. One was checked out, said no, that it's not. And the other is still ongoing. We do not know what the motivations are behind this, but we do know through great reporting from Chris Woodward at One News Now, onenewsnow.com, where you can click on the story and check it out too. But at the top of the hour, he'll bring you up to speed on the latest details, that Aaron Alexis was a 34-year-old from Texas, military contractor to 2011, and he is believed to have a criminal record, but Chris will bring you up to speed on that, as well as, everything that we can possibly know to this point that's been released. It was a story that unfolded, and you're sitting there going, okay, are we going to get first the shooter? All right, then we, like you, I'm sure, did you get the name and start looking things up? That's what I do. I go to about 20 different sources and websites and formulations to click in to see if there's anything to know about this person. Can we create some kind of link, in the sense of create, meaning, okay, is there a link? Is there a link between one group or another? History. Is he writing? Is he saying something on the internet? Something like that. Or are there reports within, like at Fort Hood, where he talked about doing it in a presentation that he gave to other members of the military? Remember that? Yeah. Fort Hood still not classified as a terrorist attack, which is just awful. Just awful. Maybe that something good that would come out of this would be just that they would do that. That said, we don't know what this is. We do know that 13 people have been killed, including the gunman. So we thoughts and prayers out to those folks and their families, obviously, anybody impacted by that. It's a rough thing, to say the least, and it's the reality. It's the reality of living in a free society to a degree, and people are going to look to politicize it. Politicizing it is advancing an agenda. Now, you can do that through sophistry, or you can do it through honest presentation, and I think that's what is infuriating about agendas that are advanced that are not contextually honest, and especially with gun control. I don't want to get into it right now, But I was thinking about, well, somebody's trying to do good here, Crane. If they're trying to do good and they're advancing an agenda and they have the facts of this, and it's not this, we're still not learning about these things, then, hey, that's a pretty good thing. I understand. People have a right to do that. I may agree, may disagree, but as long as they're honest in their presentation, and we just don't get that oftentimes. Those of us who are conservative look at what's presented and say, wait a second, there's more to the story. You're taking something out. It's a problem. It certainly is a problem. You want truth, and you want to solve the problem. Because when we see these things, we obviously want to do something to prevent them from happening again. And sometimes in a free society, you can't. And then when you disarm people, the people that get the guns, well, they're the criminals. I digress. I'm not making this a gun control thing, merely pointing out what happens in the vacuum of information and result. Comparisons to Sandy Hook as well as Fort Hood have both been mentioned. But if you want responsible reporting, top of the hour, Chris Woodward, and has this story, and Chad Groening has a story on immigration you'll want to definitely hear. One News Now, onenewsnow.com. Moving forward, President Obama said in his interview with George Stephanopoulos that President Putin does not share the values of President Obama in light of the fact that they're working together to secure Syrians' chemical weapons. Ostensibly, that's what's happening. Let's hear from the president. Roll it.
I don't think that Mr. Putin has the same values that we do, and I think obviously by protecting Mr. Assad, he has a different attitude about the Assad regime. But what I've also said to him directly is that we both have an interest in preventing chaos. We both have an interest in preventing terrorism. The situation in Syria right now is untenable. As long as Mr. Assad's in power, there is going to be some sort of conflict there, and that we should work together to try to find a way in which the interests of all the parties inside of Syria, the Alawites, the Sunnis, the Christians, that everybody is represented, and that there is a way of bringing the temperature down so that the horrible things that are happening inside the country are continuing to happen.
You mentioned Christians. It sometimes strikes me. I was listening to that this morning. I was like, hey, whoa, really? When he speaks of values and lowering the temperature, is he talking about 100,000 dead? Is that the correct temperature? Because that's what it was before the use of chemical weapons. Do you think that is what he was talking about? Is that the temperature? Is he talking about the devolving situation in Iraq, or is he talking about the bloodshed that the Muslim Brotherhood's responsible for when they were, quote, elected, and after they were elected, and then when they tried to stay in power after they were put out of power, when he embraced them? You see, I don't see President Obama holding up the same values as many that he represents, because there would be no embracing the Muslim Brotherhood. There would be not a comment to President Medvedev at the time saying, tell Vlad I'm going to be a little more flexible. There wouldn't be a bailing on our Polish and Czech allies when it came to the missile shield. We would not advance an agenda that would make our number one ally in the region, arguably in the world, Israel, defenseless. We wouldn't ask Israel to continue to move ahead as they are being terrorized by the same enemy that we're dealing with. And I don't say this I don't want you to take this as a hostile, angry move. I just am sitting there going, I don't think he shares our same values. Many of us, and I'll speak for myself, he doesn't share mine. Yet he does invoke someone who does. And that would have been, and is, in the sense of legacy, Ronald Reagan. Roll it.
Well, Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify, and I think that that's always been the experience of U.S. presidents when we're interacting with first Soviet leaders and now Russian leaders. Mr. Putin and I have strong disagreements on a whole range of issues, but I can talk to him, We have worked together on important issues. The fact of the matter is that we couldn't be supplying all of our troops in Afghanistan if he weren't helping us in transporting those supplies through the northern borders of Afghanistan.
There's more to that story. A great national security analyst, Steve Shippert, who has been writing a little more as of late, thank heavens, back in the mix of threatswatch.org. That was his website. Occasionally you see him on the Gateway Pundit, and he pops up at some places. He's just fantastic, but he's talked about that deal. I don't want to get too into the weeds over there. I want to speak to the fact that when you invoke Ronald Reagan, you are peace through strength. And we've done anything but. When you're Ronald Reagan, remember in 1981, in the winter, he spoke to Lech Walesa and spoke of the support and solidarity with the Polish people against their communist government, lighting a candle at Christmas. He spoke to that. We've gotten into an age where you use a few lines, you speak a few words, and they're just words unless they're followed up by actions. We'll know them by their fruits. We've got to back them up. What is your behavior? What do you do? What have you done? What have you said about America in 2009, your own country? You come back and you say, well, Europe's leading place in the world, and we've been arrogant and dismissive. I'll tell you where we've been arrogant and dismissive. I wouldn't call it that. I would say we've been clear at times, and clarity is power, because you let your allies know where you stand, and you let your enemies know where they stand, and ideologically, you let the people who are struggling under your enemy's oppression know where you stand, and that is for freedom. President Reagan did that. President George W. Bush did that. And certainly, to a degree, George H.W. Bush did that, president. So I think to myself, you know, if he's standing up saying, trust but verify, and I'm going to do that, you have an ad hoc foreign policy. You're saying that you're going to trust but verify, but now there are reports that the threat of force that would be in the UN resolution are not going to be there. Therefore, it will not be legal under the resolution that you will get to use military force. You never got people on board. You never spoke to this. Did you tell us what's going on in Afghanistan on a regular basis? Did you clearly outline the mission, or did you talk about merely ending the war? Ending. I know it's candy to the ears of so many of us who see our troops in harm's way. But if it's worth putting them in harm's way, it's worth winning. And they deserve the resources and obviously the rules of engagement to do so. So as I'm looking at this, I'm saying, no, not really. Really don't appreciate you using Ronald Reagan when your actions speak to the fact that you are the bizarro Reagan. That would be the exact opposite of President Reagan. And I'm not talking about one policy. I'm talking about your complete foreign policy through time. And that's a frustration. Because if you really believed in what you were doing, you wouldn't behave and you wouldn't have policies and advanced policies that you have. That all said, it's not just economic. It's also, it's not just with foreign policy, it's also with the economy. The president spoke to George Stephanopoulos, we've been playing a few clips from there, about the economic record and what is happening currently. And the president addressed the fact that inequality is there and it's grown under his administration, among other. Roll it.
No, I think the president can stop it. The problem is that there continues to be a major debate here in Washington, and that is, how do we respond to these underlying trends? If you look at the data, a couple of things are creating these trends. Number one, globalization, right? Capital, companies, they can move businesses and jobs anywhere they want. And so they're looking for the lowest wages. That squeezes workers here in the United States, even if corporations are profitable. Technology. If you go to a lot of companies now, they've eliminated entire occupations because they're now robotized. We don't have travel agents. We don't have bank tellers.
Okay, you go down the road. A couple things here. One, I believe in freedom. And I believe a company, for their production, can go where they want to go, unless, of course, we have a penalty on that particular country for their human rights violations, etc. Because if we don't do that, we don't get efficiency, and what we do is we fall further behind. Also, the idea of protectionism is saying that this company or this industry gets to charge more for their product, that we have to pay more. We are the consumer. So we have less money, they are more inefficient, and they're being beat in the worldwide competition. I think we should embrace competition, and part of that is our tax code. And he doesn't address the tax code. He doesn't address the fact of penalizing companies for being profitable, be it here or otherwise. If you want to attract American workers, or excuse me, American companies, what you do is it's pretty simple. Freedom, less regulation. Allow them to do their jobs. Talk to a business owner, small or otherwise, of how many hoops they have to jump through, and realize what their inputs are, costs versus their outputs. That's a part of what we're discussing here. So to do that, lower taxes, less regulation, strong dollar. That's consistent. Those are things you can do. Blaming automation, which has freed up and actually allowed for innovation, which allows capital to go and fund ideas that are outside the box, not controlled by government or dictated by government like the green technologies that we have seen, but rather they're actually allowing Americans to fund other Americans to say, hey, wait a second, this works, I want to invest here, and it will be good, and it improves our lives ostensibly because it provides a gooder service. It's not rocket science, but this is what the president fundamentally doesn't understand. He talks about believing in America. He does not believe in Americans because he doesn't believe in freedom. He believes in the state. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Hey, David Gartenstein Ross on the flip side, AFR Talk.